Trump was right to criticize NATO. I think at that point there was only 5 of the 28 countries spending 2% of their GDP on defense, while America spends between 3 and 3.5%.
Right.
So we're effectively carrying the load for all of NATO. Germany, the biggest economy in the EU, is at 1.5% still, and they're woefully underprepared. So it is time for NATO and Europe to wake up and spend their money on their defense. It does not need to be done by our tax dollars or our sons and daughters.
I agree with that completely. It's time for us to be sensible and not the idea that we're going to go fight there is it's reprehensible.
Now, here's the thing. Long term, the really disgusting thing is if the left had not done such a horrid thing with the lie of the Trump-Russia collusion nonsense and the Mueller investigation,
which was all garbage,
which is all provably after tens of millions of dollars of proctology was proven as garbage. If that hadn't happened, Trump could have made a deal with Putin, and it would have pulled Putin back into the orbit of the West. Culturally, we have much more in common with Russia than we do with China or Japan or Korea or India or any of Southeast Asia.
Which is exactly what I've said for a long time. Russia is a much more natural ally with the United States than they would ever be with China.
Correct. And of note, it is also in Russia's interest to settle this and to move back towards the West. Why? Because immediately, so in the 1850s, Russia seized some of those, what you call the Eastern Maritime provinces that
Correct.
used to be considered China. Since this war has not been going so well in Ukraine for Russia, China has now reissued their maps with the original Chinese names of all those maritime islands, clearly indicating their designs on taking back their territory.
Which brings me to my next question, which is China. China has territorial disputes with every single one of its neighbors, Russia included. Every single one of its neighbors, China believes it owns real estate in those places. Of course, China believes that everything under the sun, I don't have the Mandarin term for it, belongs to China.
Yes.
They believe they
believe they have the mandate of heaven.
Correct. There it is. And not only is Taiwan a rogue province, but so is the United States, and so is Canada, and so is Norway, and so is New Zealand, and so is the whole world.
If you read Xi Jinping's speeches that are not normally translated into English, like the ones he gives to the Standing Committee and to the Politburo, he talks about it is the job of the Chinese Communist Party to reorganize the world into the image of the CCP, supplanting the Westphalian order, literally reorganizing governments away from the nation states and the limited government perspective that we have now that we appreciate today into one that is in the mold of the Chinese Communist Party. Oh, hell no, we don't want that. Yeah. That is clearly his intent. He talks a lot about preparing for great conflict. The Chinese have, the government is doing some very uneconomic things that indicate they are preparing to be sanction-proof, to the point of selling their big banks are dumping their leasing fleets. They're dumping significant real estate assets in the United States at a discount.
Absolutely. Of course they are.
Preparing for conflict.
I see the left use these terms a lot. Existential threat. Existential threat is climate change. Existential threat is the real existential threats to America today, to me, are two things: our open border and China, which can kind of be under the same umbrella on any given day. Am I right or wrong?
I would add the most important one is monetary collapse, which we are well on the way to doing to ourselves. The dollar is the world's reserve currency. The fact that we have $34 trillion in debt now, the explosion of government, the the subsidy of our way of life is because the Federal Reserve can print money.
Right.
And that credibility of the dollar, the demand for the dollar, was underpinned by a veneer of U.S. military credibility and a Pax Americana. The more that Pax Americana, that piece of America, is perforated by Taliban and Houthis and Hamas and the 165 different attacks against U.S. interests in Iraq by Iranian proxies, inside of Iraq, a country that's supposed to be our friend, that really perforates, that shreds this idea of American peace and hegemony around the world. So when we can't print those kind of deficit dollars anymore, and we have to live within our means, it will cause a severe contraction of spending in the United States, and America will have to live within its budget. Now,
have we already passed that point of no return?
Maybe not. Well, we can grow our way out of a hole like that, but you have to have. But look, I guess anything is possible. Look at what Milei has done in Argentina since he was elected in December. He has cut enormous amounts of spending, and he showed that in a crisis. I mean, this is a man that campaigns with a chainsaw,
right?
Which I really respect.
Which I really respect too. I like him a lot.
Coming from Michigan, I have a lot of
Bukele
chainsaws.
and Milei have done remarkable things. Those two men.
Yes.
El Salvador, of course, for people listening.
Exactly. El Salvador now has a lower crime rate than Prince William County.
That's right.
One of the counties surrounding the D.C. area is actually where the FBI headquarters is located in Quantico. He has proven that law and order matters and it works. And he was just reelected with like 85% of the vote.
Yeah. If you take 80,000 gang members and throw them in prison and you're serious about it, you can change the trajectory. Same thing in Argentina, right?
It's pretty clear when they self-identify with all the gang tats on their face.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to figure out. So, real quickly, point of no return, or can we still get this country back into a position of not just surviving but thriving if we can get some elections to go our way? What are your thoughts?
Look, the Founding Fathers were genius in how they laid out the Constitution, because the mechanisms of fixing this are still within the Constitution. What Abbott started to do in Texas by saying, no, federal government, you have abrogated your role in border security, so Texas is going to do it. Federal government has an obligation to do it, and they've repeatedly, explicitly failed to do that.